Hey everyone, I'm back, and today we're going to be talking about The Running Man. And this movie is directed by Edgar Wright and came out in 2025, and it's based off of the Stephen King book that was originally written by under his pseudonym Richard Bachman. I have seen the original, which I didn't really care for, and I just found it to be kind of dull. And I was curious to check this one out because I like Edgar Wright, despite me not really caring for his previous movie, that being Last Night in Soho. I just found that to be kind of dull. And I'll say two things. I'll compare it to not only Edgar Wright's previous movie, but also the original from memory. Would I say this movie is better than the original? Yes. I was more entertained by this movie, and for that reason alone, I would say is better. And same can be said about The Last Night in Soho. I was more entertained by this movie, despite this one being longer. This one's 2 hours and 15 minutes or something, whereas that movie is slightly under 2 hours, but I found to be way more boring. Now, with all that being said, would I say this movie was good? Unfortunately, no. I just didn't really connect with it all too well, and I can say this much about it. I was able to tell that it was an Edgar Wright movie just based on how it was shot, and I felt as though there was some personality injected into it, and it does show, and I felt like I got an Edgar Wright movie out of it, at the very least. And I do feel as though the best performance in this movie was Josh Brolin. I thought he did a great job, and he has a really good screen presence, and I feel as though that helps out the movie a lot. And Glenn Powell, I thought he was good, and you can definitely tell that he's doing his best with what he has to work with, and I do feel as though he works pretty well in this movie. And one thing that I kind of picked up on with this adaptation, as opposed to the original Running Man movie, is that how the villains are portrayed, like these hunters, they're kind of portrayed as characters that are not necessarily out to kill the Running Man necessarily. They're also there for entertainment and kind of just toy with him a little bit and hunt each of these guys down one by one. And I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. And it added a bit more character to the story and the world. And I don't know, it was at least something that it had going for it. And I liked that it had a bit of a social commentary attached to it, and you can clearly tell that it inspired like a whole bunch of movies that came out after the book, at least from what I hear. And it inspired stuff like Hunger Games, a bunch of dystopian future stuff, and I was like, oh, I can definitely see some similarities. But unfortunately, where this movie kind of falls flat for me is just the story and the characters. I just found the characters and their dynamics to be kind of flat in this movie. Like, I didn't really care about any of them. They got good actors, but unfortunately, they're not really given a whole lot. Like, William H. Macy is in this movie, and it's nice to see him and all, but unfortunately, he's just not really given much. And there were some pointless dream sequences in this movie for no reason. I'm not sure why they were there. And going back to how I feel about this movie overall is that while I said this movie was more entertaining than both the previous adaptation of The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Edgar Wright's previous movie Last Night in Soho, I was entertained for at least 90% of it, if not the whole thing. And I didn't hate it as a whole, but unfortunately, it was just kind of bland to me, which was really dragging it down. And I just wish that it had more to offer. And the first action scene doesn't happen until like 40 minutes into the movie, which you see the concept. You're expecting, oh, there's probably going to be some fun action scenes because Edgar Wright is attached to this movie. You'd expect some really fun stuff to be had in this movie. And it peaks with its first action scene in the hotel. I was like, okay, this is feeling like a taste of what's to come. Let's see where we go from here. Unfortunately, the rest of the action scenes in the movie are just not very memorable. They're kind of forgettable, honestly. I can kind of remember one that took place in the trunk of a car that lasted for like 20 seconds. This movie is also a bit too long for what it is. It could have ended about 15 minutes earlier, and I think it would have been just fine if it did that. And it also glossed over some really important emotional beats in the story early on, which I found to be really weird because you're setting up these characters to be, kind of sympathetic characters that you would like and want to see on the screen. And maybe we'll see characters that we care about and see that our main character is fighting for his life, for his family. We'll see where this goes, and it just kind of glosses over all that stuff, and it's just not really in favor of anything. And I just felt as though it was a huge missed opportunity. Like, you should probably care about the characters, especially in a Stephen King adaptation. Like, normally in those types of films, the characters that you're supposed to be rooting for are normally very likable characters. Like, those are usually the best parts about these types of movies. Like, there are really likable protagonist characters, and the antagonists are usually like really unlikable characters. But I felt as though the antagonist characters were portrayed well enough to where it could have worked pretty well. But unfortunately, since I don't really care about the protagonist characters, what am I left with? Not really a whole lot, unfortunately. And there's also some pointless characters that show up in this movie. Like, there's a woman that shows up closer towards the end of the movie, and I have absolutely no idea why she needed to be a part of the movie. She was just a little annoying and had nothing to do. It's like, why do you have this female character in this? She has nothing to do, and ultimately is inconsequential to the entire story. And I haven't even mentioned the editing in this movie. It straight up ruins certain action scenes in this film because it's kind of choppy, which kind of surprised me because Edgar Wright, he knows how to do action scenes really well. But in this movie, not in all cases, but there are some points where the editing does not do this movie any favors in the action scenes. And that was just really disappointing to me. And I guess a couple other things to, mention while I'm talking about this movie is that once the actual Running Man game show started, I was expecting it to be nonstop action the entire time. Maybe I had too high of expectations, but I do feel as though that would have been a bit better to go that direction. But with the action scenes that we got, I don't know. I'm not really confident they would make it all that great, unfortunately. But I don't know what happened here. Just a huge missed opportunity with something that could have been really fun and enjoyable. But unfortunately, that's not the movie we got. But I will say this much. I did find it kind of funny that Arnold Schwarzenegger was on the dollar bills in this movie. I noticed that really early on. I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. And that's about all I have to say about Edgar Wright's The Running Man from 2025. It was all right. I didn't hate it. I felt as though it was an improvement over Last Night in Soho, just purely based on entertainment value, but kind of left disappointed, and I'll probably never watch this movie again, unless I'm ranking Edgar Wright's movies, and this one is just not fresh in my head. Maybe I'll rewatch it, but that's probably the only way I'll ever come back to this movie. So it was okay, inoffensive, just wasted potential in my eyes. So with all that being said, I'm going to give The Running Man from 2025 a 5 out of 10. Thank you for watching my videos. As always, if you enjoyed this review, be sure to leave a like and comment down below you thought of The Running Man from 2025, and also let me know which version you prefer. Do you prefer the 87 film or this one, or do you just prefer the book if you've even read it? Which I haven't read the book yet, but I'll probably get to it at some point. But anyways, rambling on a little bit. My social media links, they will all be in the description, so follow me there. And last but not least, subscribe to be a part of Foley Nation, and I'll see you when I get my next review up, and that is going to be for The Tragedy of Macbeth. So look forward to that, but until I get that up, thank you for watching, and have a great day.